The whispering canvas. The rain in Oakhaven did not fall. It wept. For 3 months, the small coastal town had been choked by a relentless, gray fog that rolled off the Blackwood Sea. Most residents stayed indoors, huddled near their fires, but Arthur Pendleton welcomed the gloom. Arthur was a painter, though the art world had long forgotten his name. At 45, his hands were stained with oils, his eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights, and his heart hollowed out by grief. 1 year ago, his wife, Eleanor, had vanished. No note, no ransom, just an empty bed and a cold cup of tea left on the nightstand. The police called it a missing persons case. The townsfolk whispered about murder. Arthur simply called it hell. His house was a decaying Victorian mansion perched on the edge of a jagged cliff. The ocean roared below like a hungry beast, constantly chewing at the rocks. On a Tuesday night, when the wind screamed loudest, Arthur decided to paint his masterpiece. He dragged a massive, untouched canvas into the center of his studio. He didn't use his usual paints. Instead, he mixed a strange, dark pigment he had found in an unmarked jar in his late grandfather's basement. The powder was pitch black, absorbing the light around it, smelling faintly of old earth and metallic copper. "Just one more," Arthur whispered to the empty room, his voice raspy. "One portrait to capture the truth. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag the first stroke." The moment Arthur's brush touched the canvas, a violent shiver raced down his spine. The black paint bled onto the white cloth smoothly, almost too smoothly. It felt alive. He began to paint a forest. Not a beautiful, sunlit woods, but the Blackwood forest that bordered his property. A place of gnarled trees and suffocating shadows. He painted for hours, losing track of time. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck midnight, then 1, then 3. When Arthur finally stepped back, his breath hitched. The painting was mesmerizingly realistic. The trees looked three-dimensional, their branches twisting toward the viewer. But it was what lay in the center of the painted woods that made his blood run cold. There was a silhouette of a woman. She was facing away from the frame, walking deeper into the dark trees. She wore a flowing white dress. It was Eleanor's dress. "Eleanor!" Arthur gasped, stepping closer. He rubbed his eyes. It was just his mind playing tricks on him. He was exhausted, hallucinating from the fumes of the strange pigment. He went to bed, but his sleep was plagued by the sound of wet footsteps pacing outside his bedroom door. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag the changing frame. The next morning, the fog was thicker, pressing against the studio windows like a physical hand. Arthur brewed a pot of black coffee and walked into the studio, intending to paint over the canvas. He felt a deep, instinctual dread looking at it. But when he pulled the sheet off the easel, his coffee mug shattered on the hardwood floor. The painting had changed. The silhouette of the woman was no longer walking away. She had turned around. She was now facing the viewer. The features of her face were still blurred, obscured by the dark pigment, but her posture was rigid, terrified. Her hands were pressed against the glass of the canvas, as if she were trapped inside a window, begging to be let out. And at the bottom of the canvas, fresh wet paint had formed words that Arthur knew he hadn't painted. Asterisk, help me, Arthur. It is cold here. Asterisk. Arthur's heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. This is a joke. Someone broke in. He screamed to the empty house. He grabbed a kitchen knife and searched every room, every closet, the basement, the attic. Nothing. The locks were secure. The windows were bolted shut. He returned to the studio. He approached the canvas, trembling. He reached out his hand and touched the painted form of the woman. The canvas was warm. It pulsed beneath his fingertips, a faint, rhythmic thudding. A heartbeat. Arthur. The voice didn't come from his ears. It echoed directly inside his brain. It was Eleanor's voice, distorted, muffled as if she were speaking from underwater. "Where are you?" Arthur cried out, tears streaming down his face. "In the dark," the voice whispered. "He put me here. The man with the brush. Pull me out, Arthur. Paint my eyes, and I can see the way back." Driven by a desperate, mad hope, Arthur grabbed his brush. If there was a fraction of a chance that his wife was alive, trapped in some cosmic, horrific anomaly, he had to save her. He dipped his brush into the black pigment. He began to paint her face, detailing the eyes, the lips, the sharp jawline. With every stroke, the temperature in the room dropped. The air turned freezing his breath into white clouds. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to stretch, creeping toward the easel. By midnight, her face was complete. It was Eleanor perfectly replicated. Her eyes were wide with a mixture of terror and malice. Hashtag, 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 the whispers of the Blackwood. Arthur collapsed into his chair, physically drained. His skin was pale, his fingers stiff from the cold. He looked at the finished portrait. Eleanor looked so real, it felt as though she might step right out of the frame. "I did it!" Arthur laughed hysterically. "I painted you back." The painted Eleanor smiled. It wasn't the warm, loving smile Arthur remembered. It was a wide, jagged grin that stretched a bit too far, revealing too many teeth. The painted lips began to move in real time. "Thank you, dearest," the voice echoed, no longer soft, but scraping and metallic. But a canvas requires a soul to be whole, a life for a life. Suddenly, the black paint on the canvas began to liquefy. It bubbled and boiled, pouring over the edges of the wooden frame. It spilled onto the floor like a wave of living, sentient oil. Arthur tried to jump backward, but his feet wouldn't move. He looked down. The black paint had already wrapped around his ankles, icy cold and heavy as iron. It was pulling him toward the canvas. "No! No!" Arthur screamed, clawing at the floorboards, his nails tearing and bleeding. The shadows from the corners of the room detached themselves from the walls. They flew toward him, wrapping around his arms, his chest, suffocating him. The room spun. The roaring of the Blackwood Sea outside sounded like it was inside his own skull. The canvas exerted a massive gravitational pull. Arthur felt his very essence, his memories, his flesh, being stretched, dissolved, and dragged into the two-dimensional void. Hashtag, 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 the cruel truth. As his vision began to fade into the black ink, a sudden flash of memory pierced through the madness. The fog in his mind cleared, breaking the psychological wall he had built to protect his own sanity. He didn't lose Eleanor a year ago. He remembered now. He remembered the argument. He remembered the heavy glass sculpture in his hand. He remembered the blood on this very studio floor. He remembered dragging her body out to the Blackwood forest in the dead of night, burying her deep beneath the roots of an ancient, gnarled tree. He had blocked it out, creating a fantasy of a missing wife, because his mind could not bear the guilt of what he had done. The strange pigment wasn't his grandfather's. He had harvested it himself from the soil of the Blackwood forest, mixed with the very dirt that covered her grave. The entity in the painting wasn't Eleanor. It was the manifestation of his guilt, a demon born from the blood-soaked soil of the woods, using his broken mind to break into the waking world. "You remember now," the painted entity whispered, its smile widening until its face split in two. "You built this cage. Now live in it." With one final, violent pull, Arthur was snapped forward. Hashtag, 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 the empty studio. The next morning, the sun finally broke through the clouds over Oakhaven, casting bright, golden beams into the dusty studio window. The room was completely silent. The shattered coffee mug lay on the floor. The kitchen knife rested on the table. In the center of the room stood the massive canvas. The dark forest was beautifully detailed. In the foreground, a woman in a white dress was walking out of the frame, her face turned toward the light, a sinister, triumphant smile on her lips. And deep within the background, trapped behind a thick thicket of black, thorny trees, was a new silhouette. A man, painted in rough, agonizing strokes, his hands pressed hard against the canvas, his mouth open in a permanent, silent scream.